Hello from India. I've done quite a lightning trip here this time, 4 cities in 5 days. So I've got a pretty good sense of the landscape. The last few years when I've come here, I probably felt a need to talk up the story a little bit because maybe a bit of a sense of skepticism about the story. It's a different environment now, of course, because you look back at 2024, India clearly has arrived. Very much part of kind of the election discussion globally. Foreign exchange reserves closing in on $700 billion, a number, hard to scale a few years ago, and just India more and more part of the global discussion. So if we step back a little bit and really focus on some of those features and think about, where India is now and what's likely going forwards, 3 things I think really occur to me. One is, look, we've probably passed the most difficult part of the cycle for the Indian economy. Growth, still some challenges here in terms of getting up to that 7% and staying there. But the China slowdown, aggressive Fed interest rate hiking cycle, India's handled those in really, really solid shape. Secondly, the way India's handled those developments has really comes down to the structural story and the improvements that we've seen. And it's not that everything is perfect, but 3 structural issues that historically have been handicaps for India. I mean, maybe they haven't been vanquished, but certainly they've been belayed through the current cycle. One is the current account balance. Historically, a really difficult issue, tended to blow out when demand got going. In the most recent number, the current account deficit less than 1% of GDP. A decade ago, 4 to 5% of GDP was more the norm. Secondly, the banking system, historically, just a bit of a source of vulnerability, a tendency to build up non-performing loans after tightening cycles and after periods of strong growth. Something I read this week, the non-performing loan ratio in the Indian banking system is at a record low. And the third issue is the exchange rate. The rupee historically has been a source of vulnerability, tending to depreciate aggressively at the least helpful part of the cycle when inflation was already a challenge, the currency adding to that dynamic. The improvement in the current account, the high level of foreign exchange reserves really put paid to that. And the last issue is this reform story in India, and lots we can talk about. This time I paid a visit to Gift City. It's in Gujarat. It's an international financial centre, if you like, on Indian soil, playing to the India hinterland story. As a non-convertible currency, historically, a lot of Indian-related capital market activity has occurred outside the country, in the international financial centres of Singapore, Hong Kong, London, New York, and further afield. Gift City is an effort to bring that back within the Indian domicile. So when I talk about capital market activity, companies issuing bonds, listing bonds on exchanges, aircraft leasing, even Indian non-resident investors investing in mutual funds, for instance, all of those coming into that Gift City net. Since Gift City launched a unified regulatory architecture in 2019 and 2020, it's really taken off. I don't want to discount the issues that India still has. Being here again, it seems like there's a lot of very low productivity jobs. Generating the right sort of demand for labour is still something India needs to work on. Harnessing the power of its female workforce also remains a structural challenge. And of course, India now joining the ranks of the minority government countries. There's more of those all the time. But what's clear, I think, is India's economic destiny very much now is in its own hands.